Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. Excited to see you all here, and thank you for your work as homework helpers. It is a great service, greatly appreciated by the community. My name is Rob Podlasek. I'm the training director for Literacy Minnesota, and Literacy Minnesota is a statewide nonprofit organization that supports literacy efforts in a wide variety of ways. And we just had our 50th anniversary, hard to believe that. We started as an adult literacy organization working with the roughly 1 in 5 adults who struggles with reading and writing in our community, and we still do that. We have GED programs, pre-GED programs, college prep programs, things like that. And then 1972, Twin Cities saw a large influx of refugees and immigrants coming in. So we added a children's tutoring, or excuse me, we added our ESL program, working with the adults who are working on reading, writing, English language skills, and so forth. In the Twin Cities, that's by far our biggest program, makes up about 90% of our students. Statewide, it's about half of our students. And then, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, Rise of America Reads, kind of this renewed push, working with kids. So we added our children's tutoring component, and we work with everyone from preschoolers to high schoolers, middle schoolers with homework help and things like that. Even though you're working with the kids, I want you to know that there are a lot of services out there for adults, because where there's a kid who's struggling with reading, writing, English, math, there's a good chance there's an adult in that kid's life who's also struggling, parent, other family members, so forth. So one of the services that Literacy Minnesota provides is an adult literacy hotline. Show you a screen cap. So anybody can go to this website for themselves or on behalf of somebody else, and they can do a search based on where they are, what they're looking for, and so forth. Or they can simply call the 1-800 number or text the local number, and somebody will help them find a program close to home, and translators are available in lots of different languages, so that can be arranged for the phone call. So just recognize you're a great referral source, and if the adults you run across are looking for help, you can help them by getting them connected to the Adult Literacy Hotline. So tonight's agenda is, in a short period of time, looking at some basic tips for how to help students with homework. So what are we going to talk about? Well, I'm going to start out with what we're not going to talk about. We're not going to talk about the politics of homework. Should kids have homework? Should kids not have homework? What's too much homework? What's good homework? And so forth. Not going to go there. We can hang around afterwards if you want to have that conversation. And we're also not going to talk about how to do everyday math, or how to teach multiplying fractions, or how to teach sentence run-ons, or how to teach about World War II. We're not going to talk about specific content. Hopefully, the homework will help you explain that content. What we are going to talk about is the goal of homework, because that helps us know what battles to pick. We'll look at the challenges that students coming to us often have with homework. And then we'll look at general tips for helping with homework, no matter what the homework is. So we'll talk about how to come up with a basic homework helper lesson plan to sort of structure your lesson. And then we'll look at 3 specific topics: figuring out learning targets and teaching towards learning targets, asking facilitating questions, and providing direct instruction. And even though you're all working with the same program, homework helper looks different from site to site and from student to student, depending upon their age and so forth. So mileage may vary, but these are general tips to help you with your role as a homework helper. Remember, you always have support from your program staff there. So if you get stuck, ask them for that help. So we're going to start with a quick warm-up, because that's what you do in classes, and it's good to do a quick warm-up in your homework helper session too. A little transition activity, a little get-to-know-you activity. Depends upon how much time you have with each kid. If you know the kid already, we're going to do a simple one here called 3 Things About Me, where I'm going to have people share 3 things about themselves. And don't worry, these are nothing profound. I'll start with me because I know you're fascinated by me. My 3 things. First one is I have 2 cats. There's one of my cats, Bear, who loves webinars, which is why I'm doing this from the office, because there's no way I could do this at home with a cat in my lap. Did it for 2 years during COVID. Don't want to do that anymore. I drive a Tacoma pickup, gray Tacoma pickup. Kids seem to always know what you drive. Kind of fascinates me. And then I hate bananas more than any other food on the planet. I despise bananas, the taste of bananas, the texture of bananas, the smell of bananas, the shape of bananas. Only the color do I like. Everything else I despise. So we're not going to go around and have everybody share individually. Just open up the chat box, and in the chat box, chat out your 3 things about you. Things you like, things you don't like, things that define who you are, whatever you want to share right now. Ooh, we got Ryan, an authentic homework doer, so that's great. Take another minute here for people to share out. Enzo, we can still be friends despite the banana thing. And more seconds, see if anyone else is yet to share. All right, thank you for doing that. We're going to try to make this as interactive as possible. So if you are able to contribute to the chat box, greatly appreciate that. If you are in a position where you just need to watch, that's fine as well. So let's start out with the purpose of homework. And so in the chat box, I'll ask you to share out 1 or 2 reasons why do teachers give homework? The kids will say it's because they're mean, and that's probably not the main reason they give homework. So what are the reasons for giving homework? The comprehension, to help the kids practice the skills they learned in class. What other reasons are there for giving out homework? Got a couple votes for practice, 1 for comprehension. Self-discipline, that is correct. Retention. Thank you. So there are lots of reasons for giving out homework. And when you are working with a kid on homework, your first thing you want to think about is what is the purpose for this homework assignment. The first and probably most common is to give the kids a chance to review and practice the skills that they've learned in class. So they've learned to multiply fractions in class. Now they're going to go home and practice that skill. They've learned how to use commas in class. Now they're going to go home and practice that skill. So writing class, math class, language arts class, you're going to see a lot of homework, typically in worksheet form, where the kids are practicing those skills. The next is to prepare students for the next day's lesson, sometimes called the flipped classroom. And so the kids will read a passage about World War II, and then when they come to class the next day, the teacher will give a lecture on World War II. They'll talk about World War II and so forth. So it's kind of to prepare them for the next day's content. This is really common in English classes and history classes, social studies classes, tends to be more common as the kids get older. If you're a college student, this is one of the biggest homework assignments is preparing for the next day's content. The third thing is to give more in-depth exploration of topics, okay? They may have run out of time, or they are going to go home and do a reading to expand upon what they have learned in class. There's only so much time in class. Now they're going to go home and read something, do something, write something that is a more in-depth exploration. So you study World War II, and then you write a paper about some country's participation in World War II or whatever. I'm obsessed with World War II tonight. Not sure why that is. The third thing, and libraries love this, is opportunity to identify, learn, and use resources like the library, the internet, reference books, and so forth. When I was a kid, remember that horrible assignment? Write a paper and use the card catalog to identify 3 sources. Now it's go online, do a Google search, and then sift through those 80 million recommendations. So just to use the tools that are part of their community. The next somebody mentioned is to help develop time management, study skills, organizational skills, and independence. And then the last is to assess mastery. Often teachers will give homework and then look at that homework to see, did the kid really understand what they were supposed to do, or are they struggling and need an intervention? Okay. So homework assignment may have one purpose, it may have multiple purposes. One thing I'll say is, as a homework helper, we're really helpful with these first 3. We really give lots and lots of support. But sometimes as homework helpers, we actually undermine these last 2. Because if we're doing it for the student, they're not building that independence. If we're helping them too much, the teacher isn't getting an idea of what their mastery is. So just a caution there that providing too much support might actually get in the way of one of the purposes for homework. Those of you who have tutored before, what type of homework assignments have you seen the kids bringing in, or what homework assignments do they ask you to work on? And staff people can comment what they've seen, since we have a lot of new people tonight. So geometry, spelling, word problems. So a lot of that first bullet where they're practicing those skills that theoretically they have learned during the school day. Any others? Okay, workbooks, extra practice problems. Yeah. So I think that first one is really common. The students bring us that extra practice, and maybe they didn't understand what they're supposed to do, so we can provide some additional instruction. brainstorming a speech. That's cool. Sometimes it's like, how do I get started with this paper? How do I get started with this speech? How do I get started with this task? So that's common as well. All right. So every evening, every day, kids get homework at school, and many, many, many kids, perhaps the majority of kids, come home or go to the library, pull the homework out of their backpack, finish it, put it back in their backpack, and then go about the rest of their day. No need for a homework helper. But we see the kids who need assistance. So what are the challenges you see the kids having with their homework, or what are the challenges you can imagine the kids having with their homework? Okay, go ahead and chat these out. Sure. What are some of the challenges you see the kids having with homework? Why do they need a homework helper? Why do they need you to support them? So not understanding the concept, not having a direct example of how to do it. Yeah, so big one. They're just not sure what to do, or they don't understand how they're supposed to do it. They don't remember what they're supposed to do. Yep, that's a big one. Parents aren't always able to help. And I get a little frustrated by that because homework helpers should be independent practice. And so the kids shouldn't need parents to help um, unless there's an issue. And so looking at what those issues are is important. Sometimes they don't have the vocabulary that they need. They don't have the background information that they need. They just don't remember how to multiply fractions. And so, excuse me, they need that extra assistance. Yeah, and definitely that language barrier with parents. The kids who come from homework helper often have parents from different language backgrounds, which is why they bring them to our programs. Oh, they need a better environment to do the homework. It's too distracting at home. There's other stuff to do. There's no quiet place to work and so forth. All right. So I'm going to give you some general tips for helping kids with homework. And the first one is you don't have to remember how to factor polynomials. We are not asking you to be top content experts on all of the things that you teach. And so don't get freaked out if you don't feel like, I don't remember how to do this. Hopefully you and the kid can work through it. Or you can always say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this homework. Is there something else in your bag that we could work on? Second one, it's not your responsibility to make sure the kids finish their homework or master the educational content. um, Yeah, Google's a great friend. What are Google? How do you how do you factor polynomials? Okay. For me, it was always what are the order of operations because I could never remember from time to time. But anyway, the second one is it's not your responsibility to make sure the kids finish their homework. So if they don't get done with the homework, you didn't fail as a homework helper. If they didn't master how to multiply fractions, you didn't fail as a homework helper. Again, it's between you and, excuse me, it's between the kid and the teacher and maybe the parent. So if the kid goes back to school and the homework isn't finished, that might be the best thing because now the teacher knows the child is having problems and they can provide some support. I know that some programs that the tutors get really worried if the kids didn't get done with the homework. The parents yell at you, push back. It's not your responsibility. Next tip is don't do it for them. The easiest way to get through content that they don't know about and they don't care about is to just do it for them. It gets you through the assignment, but it doesn't teach them how to multiply fractions. So really, at all costs, resist the urge to do it for them. pick your battles. There's going to be so much that the kid needs to work on, and you're going to have to pick, okay, if there's one thing I can help them with, what's it going to be? And just acknowledge that you might not be able to accomplish everything. And a big part of it is helping the kids figure that out as well. Remember, it's their homework. Sometimes we get very possessive of the homework. It's like, you can't turn that in. It's not done. It's their homework. And so if it's good enough for them, it's good enough. Again, it's not your homework. You want to help the kids establish routines. So it's more than just helping them get through a specific problem, a specific piece of homework. It's helping them become better homework doers. And so helping them establishing routines for doing homework is really key. Helping them prioritize what's most important, what's least important, what are you going to tackle first, what are you going to let slide? Again, you're helping them become better homework doers. And then you're going to help them develop study skills, stuff that they can transfer from worksheet to worksheet, reading assignment to reading assignment. The big picture stuff, like those last three, is much more important than getting through that individual problem or that individual worksheet. I want to share a quote here, and that is, kids should always be thinking at grade level, even if they aren't reading and writing at grade level. And so one of the things that you can think about is, how can I make sure that the kid is accessing the content at grade level? The easiest way to do that for a reading assignment is to read it to them. That way, they're learning about World War II, they're answering comprehension questions, they're doing whatever skill it is. You're doing the decoding part. So always think, how can I support the kids so that they have the most access to this content? And big issue when you're working with English language learners, because they have that language background difference. And so reading it to them, talking through it with them is really, really key. All right. So next we want to talk about developing a homework helper lesson plan. So something to provide structure for your time with the kids, and also something that will help them develop those study skills, develop that routine, develop those big picture skills that make them better homework doers. And so the first is to transition into the session. Kid sits down with you. How are you going to transition into the session? The next is to attack the assignment. Then plan for independence. How are you going to help them work more independently? And then the last is to provide some closure. Narini had a great question. What about children with dyslexia or learning disabilities? In that case, that's double the reason for you to read it to them, to take away the decoding issues so they can focus on the content. All right, so let's talk about these. And what this looks like will vary. If you're doing a tutoring session where you sit down with the same kid for half hour, 90 minutes, you might do all of these things. If you're working with a kid for 10 minutes because they pop over, ask you a question, and then disappear, you might do these things less. So again, mileage will vary. So transitioning into the session. Just do some type of quick small talk, transition, warm up. It's really hard to shift from one thing to another. You know, when you get to work, you have to talk to your colleagues a little bit. When you come back from lunch, you got to do a little transition back into work. Same is true in tutoring. So when they sit down, don't expect them just to jump into things. Do a little quick small talk. If you have more time with the kid, you can do a warm up like we did earlier. But just think of the necessity of doing that transition. Once you've done that, encourage them to pull out everything that they'll need for their homework today. And this is, again, a step towards making them independent learners. So rather than you digging through their backpack to find the stuff they need, challenge them to do it. They need their book and their worksheet and their pencil and their calculator and maybe their cell phone or whatever they need for that assignment. Again, you're helping them build towards independence. If they can't do that, then maybe you could say, you're going to need your calculator for this, or you're going to need some scratch paper for this. So guide them along a little bit. But again, you want them to be able to do it alone when you're not there to help them. Next thing, what homework do you have today? Just identifying in general, what homework assignment do you have? And again, some kids may just sit down and pull out all their homework. Other kids will come over with something very specific, but you just want to challenge them. What homework do you have? And then, what help would you like from me? You want them to be as specific as possible. So again, rather than just taking it and do it for them, you want them to say, I'm not sure how to do this. I'm stuck on problem number 6. Could you remind me how to factor polynomials, whatever it is? And the more specific they can be, the better. You may need to work through this with them and help them figure that out. And then once you've done that, you make a plan for the session. Okay, so we have 10 minutes together. What we'll do is we'll review the directions and do a couple of the problems, or just whatever it is that you decide that you're going to do for your time together. So the next is to attack the assignment. Once you know what you're going to do, you're going to attack the assignment. And again, what that looks like, very different if you're doing a worksheet. That's very different from helping them write a paper. But we'll talk about these 3 common things. Figuring out the learning target, asking facilitating questions, and then providing direct instruction. So we'll start with the first, figuring out the learning target. And what is a learning target? Oh, I want to say that one of the problems I often see with kids with their homework is they have no idea what the learning target is, why they're supposed to do it. And so this is a great tool to make them independent. So what is a learning target? First is the task. What are you supposed to do? I'm supposed to fill out a worksheet. I'm supposed to prepare a speech. I'm supposed to write a paper. I'm supposed to whatever. So what is the task? And that is a pretty easy piece to figure out. The next is, why are you doing it? What is the purpose? Why is the teacher asking you to do this worksheet, write this paper, prepare this speech, and so forth? And this is where students often fall apart. They know what they're supposed to do, but they really don't know why they're supposed to do it. And that makes the assignment harder to do. And then the third is, what doesn't matter? And I'll put in parentheses, as much. So in an ideal world, everything would matter, everything would be perfect, but we don't live in an ideal world. A lot of these assignments are provisional, meaning that they don't have to be perfect. They're working on one specific piece. And so if you can identify what doesn't matter, that helps you figure out what battles you're going to pick and what battles you're not going to worry about. So let's look at some examples here. Write an essay about winter in Minnesota. Use at least 7 adjectives in your description. So in the chat box, tell me, what is the task that the student is facing here? What is the task? Yeah, write an essay. Can you be more specific? Yep, so the task is write an essay about winter in Minnesota. Why is the teacher asking them to do this? What skill are they practicing? What is the purpose? Yep, using adjectives. So this is really nice because you got the task, write an essay, got about Minnesota, so you got the topic there, and then the purpose is really clear. What doesn't matter as much? Spelling. Very good. And I know some people are like, oh, spelling always matters. In a perfect world, yes, but for this assignment, what the kid is being asked to do is use those adjectives. So we're going to have to pick our battles and say what's important is use adjectives, and we're not going to worry as much about the spelling. So let's look at another assignment. Write an essay about winter in Minnesota. Use 6 of this week's spelling words. So what is the task for this second bullet? What is the task? Good. So you're writing an essay about winter in Minnesota. What is the purpose? Yep. So it's using spelling words. So here's the same task, but different purpose. And what doesn't matter as much, or what might not matter as much? Yeah, the variety of types of words. If they use essay, how amazing it is, because it's probably not going to be amazing because they're just using those spelling words. Punctuation. Okay. So you get the idea. And I know it's killing some of you to say punctuation isn't important, spelling isn't important, less important than those spelling words. All right, one more here. Write an essay about winter in Minnesota. So what is the task? Write an essay about Minnesota, winter in Minnesota. Yep. What is the purpose? Yeah, a lot of question marks there because based on this homework assignment, I don't know what the purpose is. I don't know what I'm supposed to strive for as a student, and I don't know what I'm supposed to help the student with. And so this is an example of kind of a problematic homework assignment. Get these all the time. Supposed to write an essay about winter in Minnesota. If the student brings in this, check in with them and say, what class is this for? If it's for their creative writing class, well, then you're going to talk about how the fluffy snow falls fluffily from the sky. And if it's from their science class, then you know that they're going to talk about the average wind chill in January or something like that. So asking them what class it's for helps out. Ask them, what have you been studying in class? What have you been talking about in this class? Was the teacher talk about today or yesterday? So try to get an idea of what the possible learning target might be. But this one's really tough as a homework helper. Uh, you just have the task, but you don't know what the purpose is. If that's the case, have the kid tell you what they think it is, and then help them do that. So let's look at a worksheet here. So what is the task? And don't overthink this one. What is the task? What is the kid supposed to do? Yes, you're thinking about the activity. What the task is just to fill out a worksheet. Okay, what's the purpose? You've been listing the purposes to add suffixes, the silent E rule, and so forth. So the task, fill out the worksheet, the purpose, the skill that's being worked on. What doesn't matter as much in this one? Penmanship. That's a good one. One that I want to mention here is just, do they know what the words mean? And if you're working with English language learners, there may be words that they don't know. Is it worth taking the time to explain that vocabulary? In an ideal world, yes, but in a world where you want to get through with the homework assignment, focus on that learning target and let the rest slide. It's my picture here for missing the learning target, because I, as a student, have missed the learning target, and I have a teacher, as a tutor, have missed the learning target. And I'll give you an example. I did a homework helper training for Rondo Library a while back, and I was talking with the tutor, and he was talking about how it's so tough because there's just not enough time to get through all the homework. And I'm like, yeah, that is an issue. And he showed me this. He goes, yeah, I gave this, and it took us like an hour to get through this assignment. And I looked at it and I'm like, how did this take you an hour? And he said, well, none of the kids have ever heard of World War I, and none of the kids have ever heard of Europe. So I had to go in and explain all of that to them. And I'm like, no, that's not the learning target. What's the learning target for this assignment? Reading a map and legend. And so this is a pretty straightforward activity. So name a neutral country. So here's neutral. And so I got to find that word up here in the key. Here it is, neutral. And so I got this color. Which of these countries is neutral? Well, this one here, Spain. Do I have to know what country that is? No. Do I have to know anything about it? No. Do I have to know what they're involved, anything about their experience in World War I? No, I just have to know that this is something called a neutral country. And so again, would it be great for them to know everything about World War I? Of course. Is it necessary for this assignment? No. All right, next skill we'll talk about is asking facilitating questions. And this is kind of kicking it back into the student's ballpark, or into the student's court. It's making them do the work, and it's really helping them build that independence. So you'll get kids ask these questions all the time. Is this right? What am I supposed to do? I'm stuck. What's the answer? How do I do this? And so the kids ask us this, and because we're supposed to be helpers, we jump to the rescue. We come in and we save them by answering the question. And that will get them through that specific assignment, but it's not going to make them more independent homework doers. And so even though it's harder than just doing it for them, even though you might get some pushback, you want to ask some facilitating questions. So facilitating questions are prompts that help learners identify the problem, find possible solutions, and check their work. So what am I supposed to do is an example of identifying the problem. How am I supposed to do this is a question around possible solutions. And is this right is a matter of checking their work. So the student is having trouble identifying the problem. What am I supposed to do? Some questions you can ask. What help would you like from me? Again, kick it back into their court. Where are you stuck? What doesn't make sense? Just some broad questions, helping them figure out what they're supposed to do. What is this question asking you to do? Sometimes they don't understand the question. So again, kick it back to them. What do you need to find out? Okay. Why are you supposed to do this? What's the learning target? And what do you want to learn from this? They'll just roll their eyes and say, yeah, right, but good to ask. You can help them by saying, what in this problem is familiar to you and what in this problem is unfamiliar to you. So, okay, I know this, but I don't understand this, or I recognize this symbol. I've never seen this symbol before. Okay. Where have you seen or done this before? Hopefully that'll get them to reflect back on class. What has the teacher told you about this? How does the teacher ask you to do this? I ask this question and kids think I'm doing facilitating questions, but I'm like, no, I really need to know, how did the teacher tell you to multiply fractions? Because I don't remember that. So sometimes it's a legitimate question. Find possible solutions. How am I supposed to do this? Again, you could tell them, or you can kick it back into their court. So what strategies could you use to figure this out? When else have you done this? What worked? Okay. If they're stuck on a problem, you can ask, what have you tried already? You could break it down a little bit. What do you think you should do first? What do you think you should do next? Sort of prompt them step by step. If they're still stuck, you can give them a hint. What do you think would happen if you inverted the fraction? And then they're like, oh yeah, now I remember. So if you may give them a step that they're missing. And then the last is checking their work. Is this right? Well, you could tell them, but you want them to check their own work. So a few facilitating questions you could ask. Does this answer match the question? And you'll see this over and over and over again where the kid answers the question, or comes up with an answer, and it's not even remotely related to the question. And so get them to connect the two. Is it the right answer matching the question? Talk through a problem for me. Show your work. I hated it as a kid. I ask it all the time as a teacher and a tutor. Show your work. Walk through the problem for me. Okay. How do you know this is the correct answer? Okay. Defend your answer. And a lot of problems will actually be they give the kid the answer and they have to tell you why it's the correct answer. So getting them and doing that. How do you know this is the correct answer? Is the answer reasonable? Does it make sense? Well, it goes back to matching the question. And what other possible answers are there? Okay. Is this the only answer or are there other answers? Now, I would do this not only when they get the wrong answer, but also when they get the right answer, because otherwise it becomes like, how do you know this is the correct answer? That immediately means I got the wrong answer. So have them tell you how they know it's the correct answer, when they got the correct answer, so that it isn't only when they get the wrong answer that they're challenged to do these things. What other facilitating questions have you asked or can you think of asking that will help them check their work or figure out what they're supposed to do or identify the problem? Can you think of any other facilitating questions? Go ahead and chat them out. Also wanted to mention I'll share the slides with Duo so that they can share them with you. So you'll have these list of questions. All right, we can move on. And we have one more attack assignment. Figured out learning target, ask facilitating questions. The third is direct instruction. So thank you, Noreen, for that. How do you think you should start? Again, breaking that, what am I supposed to do down into individual steps? So direct instruction, sometimes called explicit instruction, something else, EMGA, lots of different names, gradual release of responsibility. We tend to call it I, we, you. I is the teacher explaining what you're supposed to do. We is the teacher and the student doing it together. And then you is the student doing it independently. And in an ideal world, the homework is the you do it stage. The teacher has modeled it. They provided enough structured practice so the kids got it. And then they go off and do independent work either at a table or at home or at the library to practice their skills. In tutoring, sometimes you have to back up to the we do it stage and you and the student do it together. Or you really need to go all the way back to the beginning and reteach the concept to the student because for whatever reason they missed it. So I'll give an example of this. We're going to use this worksheet that we looked at when we talked about learning targets. So I'm going to do some direct instruction. And the worksheet does a lot of direct instruction. And some of the kids can just read it themselves and then use that to teach themselves. Other kids need more support. So this is talking about the drop the E rule. And it says when a word ends in silent E, drop the E before adding a vowel suffix. So there are a couple things that this reviews. The first is vowels. So in the chat box, chat out the vowels. All right, and the other piece it talks about is a suffix. So in the chat box, chat out two suffixes, two examples of suffixes. All right, so that's a really common problem that it assumes this background information that was taught last week and the kid missed last week, and so they don't know what a vowel is or a suffix is. So good homework helper thing is to review that. All right, now it talks about how to, when you drop the silent E when adding a vowel suffix, and it breaks it down into 3 steps. The first is to underline the first letter of the suffix. The second is to, if it's a vowel, cross off the silent E in the base word. And then number 3 is write the whole word on the line. And that's important so you get practice writing the letters in order. So here they give us an example, and let's go through the steps. The first is to underline the first letter of the suffix. So this is the suffix. I'm going to underline the first letter. And if it is a vowel, cross off the silent E in the base word. So this is the base word. This is a vowel. So I'm going to cross it off. And then I'm going to write the whole word again. So hoping. So the worksheet gives us one example. Maybe that's enough for the kid. Maybe you need to do a couple more. We'll assume that you got it. So that was the I step. Now we're going to move to the we step. So what I would like you to do is tell me what I'm supposed to do. Okay. So in the chat box, tell me what I'm supposed to do. What's the first thing I'm supposed to do? Underline the I in ing. So underline the first letter of the suffix. This is the suffix. This is the first letter. Okay, good. Thank you, Janet. What do I do next? What's the second thing I do? Cross off the E. Why do I cross off the E? Why? According to these directions, why do I cross off the E? No. Yeah, because it has to do with that first letter. So I'm checking to see if this is a vowel. It is a vowel. So I'm going to cross off this letter. So another thing that you can do is tell me what you're supposed to do and why are you supposed to do that? And then what's the next step that I do? Write out the new word. All right. And so gradual release of responsibility. I'm doing the writing, but the student is telling me what to do. Another thing that we can do, and I'm not going to take the time because we're running out of time, is I could have a student do it. And as they're doing it, tell me what they are doing. But I'm watching, I'm coaching, I'm supporting. So that is a good we step. And then the last step, student works independently. Once they've gotten to this point, you can say, all right, I want you to do 3 more of these or finish the worksheet or do whatever. And then when you're done, come over and we'll move on. So you want to let them work independently, or you might say, you got this, so why don't we work on something else? When you get home, you can finish the rest of this worksheet. But it's that teacher's doing it, modeling it, and then you're doing it together, and then the students working independently. And it's that doing it together step that is so important. Oftentimes we explain something and then we say, okay, you do it. And the kid's totally lost. And I did this training a while back and I saw one of the participants a little bit later and he goes, you want to know the most useful thing you said in that training? I'm like, I do want to know that. And he said, it was the whole idea of having the kid tell me what to do while I did the writing. They were doing math and the kid was petrified of doing the math problem themselves. But as long as the teacher held the pencil, the student was more comfortable thinking through the steps. And then finally they were able to pass it off to the student that was able to do it independently. All right. And we're flipping back to that lesson plan, planning for independence. Remember that the big goal of Homework Helper is to get the kids to do it independently. So asking them, what homework do you still have left to do? Well, I still have to finish this half of the worksheet, and I still have to get started on my essay about winter in Minnesota. So get them to identify what homework they have left, even if you're not going to do it together. What's your plan for doing it? Well, I'm going to go home and I'm going to eat dinner, and then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to finish that worksheet. What will you do if I get stuck? Well, I'm going to ask my mom, or I'm going to text my friend. What are your strategies for getting stuck? What questions are you going to have the teacher tomorrow? Well, I'm going to ask them how to factor polynomials because we couldn't figure it out. You couldn't tell me. My mom doesn't know. And so I need to go in and ask the teacher how to do that. And then, ooh, how are you going to remember to turn it in? Oh, there is a big difference between doing the homework and handing in the homework. There is this black hole, this Bermuda Triangle between those two things. So talk to the kid about how are you going to remember to actually turn in the assignment? Because sometimes it never makes it to the teacher for some reason. And then the closure for the lesson. Wrap things up on a human level. Okay. You're so focused on those polynomials, but you want to think about the kid as a kid. Praise them for their efforts. Great work. You were really focused. You really powered through that worksheet. You really asked good questions. You really challenged yourself. You can get them to reflect. So what are two things that you learned from doing this worksheet? Or what are two things that we did at practice today that you're going to try to remember when you get home? Kind of cheesy, but I always thank them for letting them work with me or letting me work with them. So thank you for letting me work with me. I mean, it's a great treat for me to get to be a homework helper and to work with the kids. So I always thank them. And then encourage them to keep coming back to homework helper, to continue to ask for help if they need it. All right. Well, we are at time. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. Thank you very much. I'll put my contact information on the screen. You'll have a recording of this if you want to rewatch it 100 times. And you'll also get the slides so that you can review some of those facilitating questions and so forth. Okay. I'm going to wrap things up. If you have questions, please go ahead and chat them out. Coordinators, if you have anything to add, please do.